1991.
We had a picture-perfect life, a picture-perfect family.
Give us a Christmas smile.
Merry Christmas.
But only the people that live inside that house actually know what's actually going on.
The patient is unconscious, unresponsive, not breathing. Ambulance and other medics are on the way.
My entire life has been an incomplete puzzle.
There was something really sick at work here.
Yeah, there was a lot of money problems.
My big reaction was, oh my God, what just happened?
And then the witness said that's not their mother.
Get out of my face.
There was no water found in their lungs.
And immediately I thought, this does not seem right.
I don't feel like I'll ever know the truth.
I do believe they have characteristics of a serial killer.
No one will get me this time either.
It's clear evil from a psychotic person.
In the aftermath of a murder, those closest to the victim are left questioning everything. They are consumed by a need for the truth. These are the stories of people on a journey to find it. But their search may reveal secrets they never anticipated that change their lives forever.
I was in law enforcement for 11 years in Greensboro Police Department. After I left law enforcement, and of all things, I ended up in ministry. So I'm a pastor.
Even after all these years, former Detective Good remembers the events of November 4th, 1990 quite well.
It was around 3:50. I received a radio call to go to Wesley Long Hospital. When I got there, the victim was in one of the trauma rooms. They had been working on her. It was obvious she was not in good condition. The husband had found her submerged underwater in the bathtub. They had declared her deceased.
The dead victim in the bathtub was Elaine Boskowski. Her 3 children, Randy, Sandy, and Todd, had just lost their mother in what appeared to be a tragic accident.
Life changed a lot after my mom died.
I definitely think it drew us closer because we, at that point, were like, okay, so we have to stick together. It's just the 3 of us.
To this day, the 3 still share a special bond.
Hey, how's it going?
All right.
Recently, Randy and Todd traveled to visit their sister Sandy. Both brothers have big news to share.
As you know, we've talked about the adoption process, and we decided to move forward.
Amazing.
You know, once we receive a call, we'll have you know, a little boy or a little girl. Looking forward to having you guys on board with expanding the, you know, my Boskowski tribe.
You know, I'm going to be the greatest uncle ever.
And know that you'll be an amazing dad because I feel like that you certainly stepped into that father role for Todd and I, you know, when we were kids.
You know, all 3 of us had to grow up pretty quickly.
Todd, being the youngest of the 3, continues to have a lot of questions about their mother Elaine's untimely death at the age of 34.
When I was a small child, I witnessed something. And to the best of my knowledge, for the life of me, I don't remember anything.
Mm-hmm.
It's as if it never happened.
Yeah.
So I've decided to go out and really find for myself what I feel is the real truth.
You know, so Todd, I just think the brain is a very powerful muscle. It has a way of just locking away memories and protecting us, protecting ourselves from things that we may not ever understand or need to know. And I think that that is probably what, you know, happened.
From my perspective, you know, my journey, I feel like I need to know what happened.
Tim and Elaine, the Boskowski siblings' parents, got married in 1979. To many, it seemed like a perfect match.
Mom and Dad met at a Catholic singles club, so they were both heavily invested into their religion and, their faith. I was a spoiled brat. I was a mama's boy. I clung to my mom, and she would cling right back.
I think I was definitely a dad's kid, going to work with him while my mom took care of my brother and sister. My childhood was like, just like any other kid.
Give us a Christmas, Mom.
Played with my brother and my sister. We had good times, we fought sometimes.
Hey, Todd.
Meet up and play more.
Merry Christmas.
Hey, Randy. Say Merry Christmas.
Merry.
It really was a picture-perfect life, a picture-perfect family. My father had, very high aspirations.
He was a dental technician, and then he came up with an idea to build and operate a 18-hole miniature golf course that was also accompanied by an ice cream store.
It was a kid's dream. We would eat burgers and junk all the time.
Happy birthday. Good guy.
Dad was goofy. He just wanted to spend time with his kids.
Mom loved to laugh. She liked to have a good time. She likes talking on the phone and spending time with friends. And I would definitely describe her as more of an outgoing type of personality. My mom was very religious, and she loved going to church and any kind of area that she can be involved in and kind of deepen her faith was important to her.
That's good, Todd.
I remember a pretty normal childhood.
Hey, Sandy. Daddy. Love you, sweetie pie.
But the family's happiness won't last. It comes to an abrupt end on November 4th, 1990. All the siblings have memories of that night.
I remember being asleep and then just woke up suddenly. I think I heard like a sound, like a thud. I just remember being scared, and so I went and woke my dad up. He got up, walked with me back down the hall, and tried to get into the bathroom, and it was locked. The next clear memory I have is we went outside to go wait for the paramedics to come so we could show them which apartment we were in.
I do recall looking out the window, and I saw an ambulance pass by in the window. And I strongly believe that my mother was in the back of it.
When detectives arrived, Tim Buskowski had told them his wife had drowned in their bathtub.
What my partner saw on the scene that night was simply a small bathroom in the hallway of an apartment. The bathroom door was still intact. Everything inside of the bathroom, though, where we thought you'd find water in the tub, but what my partner saw that night was something that was just the opposite. The tub was dry. That began to raise some questions that we needed to get answers to. Tim claimed in the interview that Elaine started drinking with a friend on the back porch. She was quite inebriated from everything she had had.
Tim and Elaine had gone to a church function later that evening.
Tim, though, had decided to come home early, and he went ahead and he went to bed that night. He claims that he heard a noise or a sound or something like a bump in the bathroom. He said the door to the bathroom was locked. He said he went and found a screwdriver to pry the door open. There were no pry marks on the door. There was no sign of any sort of trauma or anything to the door. Timothy had claimed that he had tried to pull Elaine out of the water, and yet when we talked to him that night, when we were sitting with him, we were talking to him in the interview room, Timothy was completely dry. We could only push so far. We could only get so much information from Tim at that moment. And so we allowed for him to go ahead and be with his family that night.
Sometime that day, I remember our dad sitting us down and saying, last night, Mom died. Being so young at 7, I don't know if I really felt like it sunk in, but I understood enough that I started crying, just leaning into my dad for comfort and a hug, and just really wanting my mom in that moment.
When Elaine's body was taken for autopsy to determine the cause of death, Elaine had no blunt trauma to the head that would explain any sort of a cause of death. There was no water found in her lungs. Elaine's blood alcohol content at the time she passed away was 0.0. So those were both inconsistent with what Tim was telling us and what the actual evidence was showing us. The medical examiner's ruling on her death was unable to determine. It was not ruled as homicide.
Look at this Halloween face.
After this ruling came back, there is nothing more we could do to pursue this case at this point. It really took the wind out of my sails. I knew that Tim was not telling us all the truth, but the truth is he is the only one who knows what happened in that room that night. And that's the piece that we can never get to.
Tim is not charged in his wife Elaine's death. It would leave Detective Good with a very uneasy feeling.
I felt like a killer had just been given a second chance.
This is actually my stepmom's and dad's wedding. Of course, that's me. I think I was about 8. You know, most people don't really take part in their parents' wedding.
On June 12, 1993, 2.5 years after the death of his first wife, Elaine, widower and father of 3, Tim Boskowski married Maryann Fullerton in a Catholic ceremony.
I remember Maryann, you know, giving an oath at the wedding ceremony. And then shortly after the wedding, Maryann adopted us 3 kids. It felt like I got my life back. She really felt like she was my mom.
This is 1991. First Christmas with Maryann, Daddy, Randy, Sandy, and Todd. Randy, how old are you? 7. And Sandy, how old are you? 8. Todd, how old are you?
7. I mean, 6. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
All right.
You know, it's difficult because, you know, this is the life that was. You know, this was Christmas morning, and then this is all the memories that you have of the family together.
Hey, Maryann. Merry Christmas.
Soon, it's as if the tragedy with the Boskowskis' first mother, Elaine, had never happened at all.
Family was functioning like any other family at this point, unwrapping gifts, being happy, acting as a normal family. Didn't seem like anything was on the verge of happening.
The camera's not on you though, Randy.
I can see.
Todd returns to the old neighborhood and the home he shared with his siblings, his father, and his stepmother, Maryann.
there it is. It looks like the all-American dream. It really was a picture-perfect life, a picture-perfect family. From the outside looking in, you can't fathom that something like that would have happened.
Christmas Eve, it's about 10 degrees out here. There's Sandy and Todd.
But only the people that live inside that house actually know what's actually going on.
On November 6, 1994, almost 4 years to the day after Elaine dies in the bathtub, there is another tragedy. This one involving Maryann. Todd is hoping a former neighbor of theirs, Wesley Semple, who found Maryann in the hot tub, might be able to tell him more about the events leading up to her death.
Hey, how are you? How are you?
I'm so glad to see you.
Me too, me too.
On November 6th at 12:46 in the morning, I get this phone call, I need your help, I need your help, I need your help. And it was your dad.
So you came through, you were approaching the deck.
And I thought, well, I'll just go in. And at one point, I got on the deck and the hot tub was right there. And right along the edge of the hot tub was a body. At that point, I was hoping they were okay. The phone was there on the deck, lit up, which meant it was live. I picked the phone up.
The next door neighbor. Okay, is the patient out of the water? Yes, she's just jumping right now. Okay, she's not breathing and she does not have a pulse, correct? I know she's not breathing. I don't know about the pulse. Okay, the other medics are on the way. Okay, don't hang up with me. Sir?
And right along the edge of the hot tub was Maryann. I knew she was dead because of the angelic look on her face. She was at peace. And her face actually had that look on her, very angelic. And that's something I always remember.
I was just a child when Maryann had passed. I didn't know what to think. After I graduated high school, I just decided to enlist. 3-4 years, I actually did presidential security. President all the way down to cabinet members. And I started thinking like a cop.
As part of his journey, Todd meets with a detective who investigated the death of his stepmother, Maryann. Todd was 9 years old when that happened.
Hi, Todd.
Yes.
Bill Barrett.
Nice to meet you.
The last time I saw you, you were a little boy.
It's been literally like 25 years.
Right. I wanted to take this opportunity because I was saying that the thing that stuck with me with this case was you guys, the kids. I just felt bad for you guys always.
Were you the first person on the scene?
I was one of the first, yeah. Initially, when I ran around the back and up onto the deck and saw that the person was a 30-some-year-old woman, that, to me, was a shock. And then everything just began to build. Your dad was worried about what was going to happen to him.
Like, did he even ask about the kids? You know, me, my brother, and my sister?
No, he didn't, Todd. He seemed, and I know it's your dad, but I'm just being honest with you, he seemed very cold, and he seemed very self-centered. The thing that I remembered immediately sticking out in my mind was there's a apparatus, a breathing device that you can use if you're doing CPR on someone that's a stranger that you don't want to put your mouth on their mouth. Boskowski had one of those devices, and he was saying about how he couldn't get it to work. And I thought it was odd that he would use a device like that on his own wife.
Then, when Tim's parents arrive at the house, things take an odd turn, and the detective's suspicions grow.
When Tim's parents arrived, the father came in and he seemed a little out of sorts. But the mother came in and she seemed angry. She walked up to Tim, like right up to him, almost like, "What did you do?" And she said, "What happened?" And he said, "Oh, we had a fight earlier, but we made up. Everything's fine. We were in the hot tub. You know her drinking. You know how she drinks. And we argued earlier, but we made up." And she said, "What happened?" And she was almost accusatory. At that point, they realized I was there, and they looked over, and Tim said, I hope they don't try to pin this on me." And I thought, that does not seem like a normal response from someone who lost their wife moments ago. I knew at that point, even though it was in the infant stages of the investigation, just everything up to that point just did not add up.
Hungry for more information about his father's behavior that night, Todd decides to meet with another detective, Gary Waters, who was on the scene.
Hey, Gary, how are you?
Long time no see, my man.
You too. I really just wanted to ask you some questions and some of the things that you remember. Like, you know, as soon as you got there, like what you saw, like my father's demeanor, and what made you lead to believe that there was something more than what was actually going on.
You know, I was informed that, you know, that he said that she drank like numerous beers, maybe 13 to 15 beers that day. She was under the influence. So I was looking for all these empty beer cans. Well, downstairs, I think there was a couple in the garage and some in the basement area, but the cans were put back in the boxes. They were warm and dry. It looked like they'd been there a while. I mean, it just didn't hit me that, you know, 13 to 15 beers, the house was immaculate. That struck me odd.
The CPR device, the one Detective Bill Barrett remembers, is also something that Gary Waters remembers from the scene.
The breathing device for CPR you use on strangers. Mm-hmm. They told me he took the time to go downstairs to find that, to bring it up.
That's the first time that I've heard of that. In a medical emergency type of situation, minutes matter, seconds matter. So, you know, why would somebody spend the time to go downstairs, look for a medical device when you are losing precious, precious time?
That struck me odd.
Have you ever heard of someone doing that?
Husband and wife? No.
Right.
No. That's for used out in the street so you don't get sick or somebody throws up on you. But that struck me odd. After that, Detective Savetic from the Allegheny County Police arrived. I briefed him of what we have learned. And Detective Savetic asked him to remove his sweatshirt. And there was fresh gouges, scratch marks about his back. Some on the neck.
Upper back?
Yeah, I believe, and I think a few on the neck. So we were right there surmising there was definitely a physical argument. Yes. We were told there's 3 children upstairs, and I said, that's a shame. They don't even know their mother passed away, and I think your grandfather said that's not their mother. I go, where's their mother? He says, she passed away 4 years ago. We asked what happened. He didn't want to get into it. We says, you're going to have to tell us. We're going to find out anyway. And then he told us that she drowned in a bathtub down in Greensboro, North Carolina. Well, your antennas are definitely going up now. So we contacted Greensboro Police Headquarters.
Waters will never forget what he heard next on the other side of the line.
And informed them what we had up there. And you can hear them in the background yelling, he did it again. He did it again.
You know, I'm actually at the point where I outlived my real mom. And the next few years, I will be at the point where I actually outlived Maryann, my stepmom.
How often do you think about your mom and stepmom?
Oh, every day. That's not gonna change. I'll always think about them. Again, I was not even 6 years old, so I don't really remember a whole lot. Kind of lost memories, I guess, in a way.
Todd keeps thinking about an exchange he had with his former neighbor, Wesley Semple, about events leading up to the night he found Maryann dead in the hot tub.
Were there anything that you can kind of look back and maybe like were there? Like warning signs were there? Red flags?
There was a couple things. I don't know if you remember, we went to Scott Camp together. And up at Scott Camp, your dad said to me, "Oh, I need to talk to you about something. Just in case the kids come over and tell you that Maryann's passed out, I want you to know that she had a drinking problem." I'm thinking, why would he say this? It didn't explain anything other than just that.
Right.
Wesley had also told him about a cruise Maryann and Tim had taken to the Caribbean just before she died.
And then after the cruise, which was a few weeks before the event, out here in the backyard, I said, "How was the cruise?" And he goes, "Well, Maryann's bar bill was $350. That was an odd comment to throw at me because we had never seen Maryann drinking to being drunk.
So from your perspective, you never perceived her as somebody that, had a drinking problem?
No.
Maryann's quote-unquote, drinking problem that my father was projecting out to others. Could that mean that my father, was being calculated and planning? It could be. That's the $100 million question.
In 1994, despite their growing suspicions, Pittsburgh investigators were unable to charge Tim with Maryann's murder. They hoped her autopsy report would change that.
We didn't have enough probable cause. We were waiting for that pathology report. We had to have rolling homicide. You can't arrest without a crime. Detective McCarthy observed the autopsy, and he called us and briefed us on the trauma of Maryann. The legs being black and blue, she's kicking on something, fighting for her life. Compression of the neck, cut off her air supply. The trauma to the eye corresponds with being strangled and not an accidental drowning. Now, the coroner ruled after his findings that this was a homicide. With that, we had enough probable cause to charge him with first-degree homicide. It's clear evil from a psychotic man to asphyxiate both wives with their kids in the house.
A week after my stepmom passed, my father was arrested. He was arrested and charged with murder on my 10th birthday. He was placed in jail, not let out on bail.
Coming from a good family background, didn't see that this was something that could happen.
When are they going to realize that they made a mistake and that he can come home and we can move back into our house?
I can say honestly that I never anticipated that Timothy would have the hubris to do it again.
Tim Buskowski was charged with murder in his second wife, Maryann's death. Todd decides to meet with a friend of his stepmother, Maryann, as the next step on his journey.
So we're going to see Elaine. She was definitely Maryann's closest confidant / best friend. Is that it?
Hey!
How are you?
Good. Oh, how are you?
Good.
Oh, it's so great to see you.
You too. You
look
too.
great.
Thank you. You too.
I'm really proud of you, and Maryann would be so proud of you. I can't even tell you how much she loved you and how proud of you she would be right now. I talked to her the night she was killed. We were on the phone for over an hour that night, Detective Waters called me at work the next day. He thought that I knew that she was dead. And I said, "What are you talking about, Gary? I just talked to her last night." He goes, "Oh, I thought they told you. She drowned in the hot tub." And I'm like, it was 11 o'clock when we hung up. She wasn't going in the hot tub. He didn't even like the hot tub. And she had been sick. And
that's what I'm saying. As her best friend and some of the information that you knew at that time, did you really believe Detective Waters when he told you at the time?
I was in shock. I just kept saying over and over again, that's the way his first wife died. That's the way his first wife died. And I couldn't get that out of my head. And then when I started talking to detective, and he started telling me the details of your mother's death, detective was convinced that he also murdered your uncle, Elaine's brother in Texas.
See, I didn't even...
It's entirely new information for Todd that his father could have killed someone else.
So wait, this is...
December of 1981. He was a young, only in his 20s, I think, and they found him in the bathtub, drowned or hit his head or something, but it was they couldn't determine the cause of death. Elaine's mother was convinced that there was foul play, but the father's like, "She's dead, just let it go." And I guess they just dropped it. Did you even know him?
I didn't even know she really had a brother. But it is interesting. So that would be 3 people, correct?
Yeah.
Connected to a tub that passed.
Mm-hmm.
And all connected to him, to my father.
Right.
Once Tim Boskowski is charged with his second wife Maryann's murder, his first wife Elaine's case is reopened back in North Carolina.
The moment we found out they had made a case against Timothy in Pennsylvania, it started a chain of events here.
When a new medical examiner determines Elaine's cause of death was asphyxiation, he reclassifies the case as a homicide.
The medical examiner's report went from being unable to determine to homicide, and we could now bring him to trial here in North Carolina.
In thinking about this case and about the Boskowski family, I questioned, why would he do this? I mean, anytime anyone commits a crime, you ask why. Was there another woman involved? Was he jealous? Was there another man involved? Did he secretly hate her? I mean, why would he murder his wife?
Timmy, wait.
He was having a lot of money problems, and he goes down to Greensboro, North Carolina, to open up a ice cream and a putt-putt course.
This is King Kong.
He didn't do enough background on that, for what we learned. Here, they were putting an interstate in. They were going to cut off all his traffic. So everybody's going to bypass that. So he was going under.
Despite his financial situation, Tim had taken out an insurance policy on his first wife.
There was an insurance policy that Tim had on Elaine, and it was for $25,000. Trying to get money from taking the life of your loved one. I mean, I can't think of anything more low.
Tim took one out on Maryann, too.
We did learn that Maryann's family had some questions about Tim and about his motives. As a wedding gift, they received $5,000 from Maryann's parents, and they wanted them to buy furniture. And we learned that Tim insisted that they buy an insurance policy on Maryann with that money. It became more clear that Tim's motive, I believe, was financial.
Hey, Tim.
And Tim may have been perfecting techniques he used in Elaine's murder when he killed Maryann 4 years later.
Something that happened the second time is that there was talk of somehow Timothy having a CPR mask that he put over Maryann's face to give her CPR. Why would Tim use a CPR mask on his wife? It made me remember from Elaine's case, the night that I talked to Timothy, and he continually was talking about how he kept getting chunks of vomit in his mouth when he was trying to give Elaine CPR. There was something really sick at work here. It wasn't just arrogance. but it was as though he seemed invincible, that I could just do the same thing, use the same technique, the same kind of things, and that no one would get me this time either.
After 2 years in custody, Tim Buskowski is brought to trial in 1996 for the murder of his first wife, Elaine.
The atmosphere in the trial was very somber.
Tim was found guilty of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison for the death of Elaine. He was subsequently convicted of first-degree murder and the death of his second wife, Maryann, and given a second life sentence.
I think my first reaction to hearing the guilty verdict was just like devastation and disbelief, all along feeling like they had made a mistake. Like, where do we go from here? And, you know, what's gonna happen to us?
I was pleased he was convicted and that we had him off the street. My heart went out to Randy, Sandy, and Todd. My biggest concern was just that somehow they would be able to make it through this and that they would be okay.
So our caseworker came the next day. Part of Kelly's visit with us was, you know, with your dad's verdict of being guilty, like this really creates a permanence in your situation, and we need to figure out where to go from here.
The Buskowski kids had been placed in temporary foster care, but now they needed a permanent home.
We knew that they could very easily split us up. And that was something that we were not willing to have happen.
For me, it was important that we stayed together because we were all each other had.
We did a newspaper article. It was a 3 of our faces, smack on front page of a Sunday newspaper.
It was a very publicized story here in the Pittsburgh area, and I was glad to hear that they were all placed together, maintained that family unit.
The Buskowski siblings lived together in the same foster home until all of them had graduated from high school. After weeks of research and meetings, Todd decides it's time to meet with his brother and sister and relay all that he has learned.
I was on like a fact-finding mission. I wanted to gather information for myself.
Of all of his meetings, the one with Eileen Dad, his stepmother Maryann's friend, stands out.
She brought up the fact that investigators may have been looking at Dad for previous things that happened in his past. She mentioned something about Elaine's brother and how his death was very similar to the death of our real mom, Elaine. So from my standpoint, anything can be possible. But you know, is it actually plausible? There was no official investigation, so you probably never will know.
For Todd, it remains a piece of a traumatic puzzle that was his childhood. To get more closure, Todd made an attempt to meet with his father, but Tim refused to confess to or even discuss the murders.
For so many years, I wanted to know the truth, and I wanted him to be able to look me in the eyes and say, yes, I did this. I felt like I wanted to confront him, wanted him to actually come clean. But he didn't budge. And then after that visit, about a week or so later, I get a call from my brother. He told me that he had received a letter from our father. And in that letter, our father pretty much took responsibility for our mother's death, Elaine. And that's never happened.
You know, just recently, you know, I kind of came to my own terms with the letter that Dad wrote us. You know, in that he takes responsibility for Mom's death. You know, forgiving him for that on my own end, because he did take responsibility, you know, for that.
The simple fact that he said, I am responsible for your mother's death, that seals his fate. I feel like I got a good handle on who my dad is. And it sounds very sad to say, but, our dad is a, cold-blooded killer. So there's no reason to hold on to, any extra burdens. If you can move on from a situation like this, try to do that.
I have come to a place in my life where I realize that I'm never gonna know the truth. I believe that my dad has lied for so long that I'm not sure he even knows what the truth is.
Yeah, there we go.
But I believe that he killed my mom. And I believe that he killed Mom Maryann. And that he is where he should be in jail and he should spend the rest of his life there.
Successful isn't, the amount of money that you have in your pockets or a high-level job. It's really, winning at life. Being able to, get through what we went through. Didn't have our moms, didn't have our dad, but being able to push through that, coming out of that tunnel successful. Hopefully something that, Mom and Maryann are proud of, up there, and that we can say, we're here and you look at us, we made it.
I believe that my father is a serial killer. He's killed 2 people. Some people think 3. Going through something like that at such a young age, I was 9, 10 years old, and I had to grow up pretty quickly. It changes you, it forces you, and it affects your entire life. Do I still mourn? Do I still have anger? Yes, I do. No kind of information is going to bring Maryann and Elaine back. But the simple fact that, I am where I am today, I'm a well-adjusted adult, and given what I've gone through, I would say that that's just a blessing in and of itself. I don't want them to have died for nothing. I want their deaths to actually mean something.